Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, John. Welcome to the
Oh,
Intentional Living Process, uh, Intentional Living Podcast. You can say I didn't do my rehearsal this week. Um, John Donovan in Oceanside, California. Marty Keller here in Sacramento, California.
yep.
A beautiful summer day in both our parts of the state. This is the podcast in which we examine and uncover subconscious obstacles to what we want, the kind of life that we want to live. We learn to befriend those obstacles to make them allies rather than enemies in manifesting the life that we want as adults. So, how do we do that? Well, we look at the patterns of behavior that we say we don't want. This is where we start. Look at the patterns of behavior that we say we don't want, and nonetheless continue to manifest. Like, have you ever hurt somebody that you loved and later regretted it? And then hurt them again, usually in the exact same way? Or have you ever realized in the middle of an argument with someone that you were on the wrong side of that argument and you continue to take that side anyway?
Mhm.
Or have you ever known that you were about to do or say something that you would regret? Maybe even literally heard a voice in your head say, don't do that. And nonetheless, you found yourself unable or unwilling to stop. Well, these are the kinds of patterns that we look at here in this podcast, and we have a process for dealing with, befriending those voices and creating something much more powerful, much more potent, much more conscious. And so that's the intentional living process. John, you developed this format many years ago, and we continue to make little tweaks to it over time as we continue to learn more about ourselves and as people teach us stuff that we didn't realize. And part of what we've been talking about, as you know, is we've been examining a series of principles that we've generated over the course of many years. And some of them just recently we
Yeah.
generated. So as I talk about, we keep learning stuff, we keep adding or tweaking the system, the program. Um, we've been following those, and we've been doing a podcast on each one, examining in depth some of the thoughts and concepts and challenges behind each one of these principles. And I'm going to put them up on the screen here so that people who are with us today can follow along and see what if you're here, particularly if you're here for the first time, and see what the heck these people are talking about. We uh, we started almost a year ago with the very first one that's on the list. It's not first in order of priority or importance. It's just the first one we wrote down. I'm always getting what I want. So we did that podcast, John, in August of last year.
No.
So that's almost a year ago. And
Yeah.
over time, over the course of the last year, we've gone through each one of these and examined them in depths. And some of them we found, as you recall, so provocative or so complex that we spent a couple of podcasts on them to
Hmm.
get in depth. And last week, we were at this one here. It says, "What I feel determines what I perceive."
Yeah.
And that podcast has been uploaded to the Intentional Living YouTube channel. And by the way, if you're watching, please hit that subscribe button and hit that little like thumb to help us build the followership of this podcast. So today, the next one on the list is no is a complete sentence. What the heck does that mean to you, John? No is a complete sentence.
Um, Part of my struggle, pre-recovery, and I want to say well into my recovery, was being able to say no to people who asked for something. Uh, a couple of people would ask me to help them on the weekend, and I'd say yes to them, um, and then have to disappoint somebody because I couldn't do it all. Plus, I had my own work to do. So in not being able to say no, or thinking I'm gonna hurt their feelings, or I want to be their friend, or they won't like me, I just kept say, complying or wanting to do something I really didn't want to do. Um, and in that, I also owned that I wasn't able to hear somebody say no at a request I had. I didn't want to hear somebody say no. So I would couch all my questions or requests in a way that would support them to say yes. And what I've discovered is that's the definition of manipulation and control. Although I didn't know I was doing it. Once I discovered that I wasn't able to, and it's about setting a boundary, setting a clear boundary. What I mean by boundary is something I will participate in or not participate in. The boundary is the behavior that I choose to display. Uh, a boundary is not expecting somebody else to act differently so that I feel better. That's a demand or a limit. Um, um, I was at a therapy session and I was telling the therapist about a situation, and I said no to my partner. It was about mowing the lawn the right way. I don't know what it was. And I said, I'm going to do it this way. And then she interrupted again and said something else. And I go, oh, okay, we'll do it your way. And the therapist said, John, you can say no really well, clearly, one time. But if anybody challenges that, you stop saying no. She said, you may have to say no several times. And that never dawned on me. It's like, um, so we've made it a principle. Another thing in the traditional, like me facilitating a group, in the traditional classroom group setting, there's a authority figure or um, teacher, and everybody listens to the teacher, feeds back what they heard the teacher say, get an A or B or C. And I tell the people that's coming into my group that if I ask them a question, they always have three options: yes, no, or maybe. And if they don't feel safe saying no to me, I ask them to give me feedback about how they're hearing me speak or what tone I'm using, or because I preface every group with, I'm not here to change you. I'm not thinking I know what's best for you. Um, and your choices around either addiction or mental health or whatever your issue is are your choices. And I don't pretend to know what that choice would be best for you. So, and then I say, if I ask you a question, you can say yes, no, or maybe. Um, and if they don't feel safe saying no, let me know how they're hearing me ask the question or what's going on with them that they don't feel safe saying no. Um, so that's pretty much. I know there's a lot more to it, but let's just start there. So.
Well, thank you. There's what's behind what I'm hearing you saying, and see if this makes sense to you, is that one of the um, characteristics of adult children of alcoholics, in fact, I think it's in the laundry list, the 14 traits, is the tendency to people please.
Right, there you go.
So,
Yeah.
what is people pleasing? And people pleasing is a dynamic in codependence generally. People pleasing
Yeah.
is um, if I don't say something that I think you want me to hear, then you won't like me, and worse, you might cut me off from affection, connection, security, whatever it is that I'm I've imbued or endowed our relationship with. And so
Mm-hmm.
even if I want to say no, I may not say no because I'm afraid that you won't want to hear me say no.
Correct. Yeah.
Or something else that we do, I find myself doing, I still do it, is say, no, I don't want to do that, and then have an explanation as to why.
Right.
Well, because I got to go to the meeting and I have other things I have to do, and implying that I would do this, I would say yes, except I have these other things that, gosh, I'm sorry, I just can't. I got to do these other things, so I'm not
Yeah.
displeasing you on purpose.
Or disappoint you.
Yeah.
That's therein lies the family of origin dysfunction, childhood trauma. Children I'm talking about my demographic, boomer. The children were expected to obey, and any
Yes.
no was seen as a rebellion. Kid that's going to grow up and get put in jail, not paying attention, no morals. So when I ask my grandson a question, um, I have that in the back of my mind. If I ask him a question, he has the option yes, no, maybe. So when it started, it was when he was younger, would you be willing to help me pick up the toys? No. Oh, okay. Then I'd start picking up the toys because that was the question. And um, he soon fell in line. He started picking up the toys and that kind of thing. But I didn't, because he said no, I didn't tell him he was wrong. I didn't tell him he was mean. I didn't tell him he was lazy because the question was open to a response where he's at, not where I think he should be.
And it
And
was it was safe to answer accurately
right, he wouldn't get
because there
punished,
was right,
ostracized.
there was no negative consequence for
Right,
saying something Grandpa didn't want to hear.
right. Um, Now, if he was running out in the street and I said, don't run out in the street, and he goes, no, I'm going to run and pick him up. You know what I mean? And he still gets to say no. I'm not going to. Children are learning emotional regulation, frustration tolerance, impulse control, and delayed gratification. They're also learning the myriad of things needed, cues and things about the culture and the society they're brought up in. Done in a healthy way, which I intend to do with my grandson, he has a sense of autonomy. Here just recently, I asked him to help me, and there was a sequence of questions, and he would come up with, "No, I'm tired. No, I got a headache." And I'm like, "Okay." I said, "Okay." So when you give me these excuses, instead of just saying no, you don't want to do it, you get to say no, you don't want to do it. So I was asking him to help me and pick up some tools or do some yard work. He goes, no. And I said, well, he didn't say no. He said, I'm too tired. And I said, you get to say no. You can say no. He goes, I don't want to do that, Grandpa. Well, um, if that's where you're at, you get to say that. And he actually said, I don't want to say that to you. Something like, because I love you. And I said, whoa, 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 you can love me and still say no. Okay. So I kept up with it. And then finally he goes, well, Grandpa, I want you to know I love you and I don't want to do it. And I said, oh, okay, I can do it myself. And I went ahead and did it. And he was able to hear himself say no without being punished or told he's wrong. And then a couple of days later, his mother wasn't home. He was in the front yard. And I came around from the back and I says, come on, we're going to Home Depot. And he goes, no. And I said, I want you to know I'm hearing you say no. And today we're going to Home Depot. He goes, I thought you said I could say no. And I said, well, I did. And you don't always get what you want. In this case, your mom's not home. And I'm not asking you, I'm letting you know I'm taking you with me to Home Depot. And he got into his frustration mode and made faces and moping. And I said, you can feel frustrated. I get the frustration. and we're going to Home Depot. So it's not like letting him get away with anything. It's him knowing that I love him, and then learning how this communication thing works, and what's to give him some discernment about what he wants in a relationship. There's all kinds of things in there for him to learn, which now he's 10, which he's in a learning mode. He's not an adult who has the capacity for discernment and detachment. He's learning that capacity, although he does have a real good sense of self. Um, and I see myself as a example for him and as an authority figure for him that loves him. And no matter what his choices is, I'm not separating myself from him or berating his behavior. If his behavior is he's frustrated and he's pouting or making a face or walking slow or kicking things, I just say, well, I see you're frustrated. That's frustrating when I don't know what his plan was, but it wasn't to go with me to Home Depot. So he had to rearrange his plans in his mind and then accept and move forward. He did that in a safe place. I didn't have that safe place where I could sense self and use my voice and not get beaten down, redefined, told I was bad, um, ostracized, punished. So he's turning 10. I'm excited because he's getting his mind of his own, and I'm looking forward to kind of pushing against that little guy and have these little conflicts and different experiences where he can feel himself bump up against me and still be loved. So
Well, I find interesting in that story that you just shared with us is that he had already learned somewhere that he shouldn't say no to you because he loved you.
correct.
And again, not to say anything's wrong here. This is in the culture,
Right.
and it's particularly in the culture what you were referring to earlier, which is that oftentimes being the parent means I'm the boss.
I'm the boss.
I'm the boss, and you cannot question the boss.
There you go. Very
And
good.
and in the second example that you just shared with us about going to the Home Depot, you were being the boss.
Yeah.
You were like, you don't have a choice to say no, or you have a choice to say no, but you don't get to always have what you want.
Correct.
And
Exactly.
and so the that discernment, yes, he may not be old enough to generate discernment on his own, and he's learning how that he might do it.
Yeah.
He's now because he's going to test that not just in his relationship with you, but in his relationship with his mom and relationship with other people, relationship with teachers at school, all those things. So it's going to,
Hmm.
all of our development, even now in our recovery, is a series of experiments with relationship with the inside of us, relationship with people on the outside of us, to see what happens, and to
Yes.
make conclusions, draw conclusions, or draw um, tentative conclusions about, oh, if I do this, then this is likely to happen. If I do that, that's likely to happen.
Correct.
So part of what we're doing in the intentional living work is to uncover those subconscious beliefs about, oh, if I do this, then that will happen, to ask the question, oh, is that true?
Correct.
So, for example, let's go back to what we were talking about earlier about people pleasing. It's like, oh, is it really true that if you hear me say no, you're going to leave me? That's
Right.
my subconscious belief. That's the reason I'm going to say yes to you, even when I want to say no.
Yeah.
So in our practice, we learn to notice that subconscious motivation. Why am I going against something I feel against the direction of my body says, don't do that. And my mind goes, oh, okay, yeah, I'll go. I'll do it.
Yeah. And part of my recovery was um, in dialogue with partner or significant other. I could make choices about something that I really didn't want to do, or to enhance and build the container or the relationship. And a remedial example would be, let's go out to dinner. What do you want, Chinese or Mexican? And I could just really not want Mexican that day. And my partner says, oh, Mexican. Now I can make the choice to do something I really would not prefer to do. It's not
Right.
going to kill me, but for the purpose of building the relationship. So I can say, okay, all right, let's do that. We get to go out, and not hold her hostage like I did this for you. Next time, mark it on the blackboard in the hallway. I got 5 like stripes. You only got 2. So come on, I need more stripes going on here. Like a bartering tool. It's a choice that I make, and she's free of any obligation to reciprocate it because I'm not actually doing it for her. It is, the benefit is for her, but it's in my intent is to build the container of the relationship, which is for me. I'm actually doing it for me,
Well,
and she benefits. I mean,
yeah, I mean, that's called win-win
win-win. So,
because I'd like just to point out to those of you who are watching that what you just said is the result of conscious choice
conscious,
as opposed to subconscious impulse. So
correct,
the beginning of the podcast, we always talk about you find yourself in the middle of an argument and you realize you're wrong and you say it anyway, or you're about to do something you'll later regret and you go ahead and do it anyway. So those are examples of impulse. I follow my impulses because I haven't examined them.
correct,
I'm not in conscious choice because I don't know that I have an alternative. In the
correct.
example that you just gave, you noticed alternative.
Mm-hmm.
You could say, "Oh, I really don't want to go to Mexican." That was, and you made a conscious choice to promote the connectivity and intimacy in your relationship over your preference that your belly had for what it wanted to
Right.
eat.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
point is
Yeah.
that that's conscious.
That is conscious. Very good.
So one of the
I
things
work
that
hard. I work hard to be conscious. Know that my choices are conscious, and they have an impact. And because I choose to stay in my integrity, or I choose to be gracious, I don't get kudos for that. I don't need kudos for that. It's nice when somebody says, "Oh, thank you, that was gracious," uh, and I don't need it because I'm doing it actually for myself,
right,
for my own well-being, for the
right.
energy I need for my immune system and health and well-being. So,
We don't have this as a principle, and I'll throw it out to you whether we ought to create it. But the implications that we have in our work is there are no wrong choices.
correct.
So there are there are no. Maybe it's a better way to say there are no wrong choices, and there are consequences.
And there are consequences for every
So
choice.
so you could have chosen to say no. Let's figure something else out. I really can't do Mexican tonight,
Yeah,
and then there would be consequences to that,
right.
unforeseen. Maybe you know your partner, your wife or girlfriend well enough to know that she's going to get really upset, or maybe you know that you can negotiate something, whatever. But there's no matter what you choose, there's a consequence, and you can't make the wrong choice. You just choose, and
You
whatever
choose.
shows up. Because And the reason I emphasize this, John, is that the part of the trauma of the wounded child is that we believe that we're wrong. We
Yeah,
believe we're a mistake, and we're constantly trying to find a way to navigate between our actual innate preferences and pleasing other people so that we're not abandoned.
correct.
And so this goes to what you said at the very beginning of the podcast around boundaries. A person who's caught in that dilemma has weak boundaries or
Yep.
is willing to give up his or her own integrity in order to get this elusive approval, love, support,
Hmm.
validation, and which means I'm if that's me or when that's me, I'm always at the mercy of someone else. I have no power.
Correct. Yeah, you were powerless.
And so part of what I've learned as I've done this work with you over the last 15 years is, and this is what I, as a meeting facilitator, this is what I support people in seeing is there's no wrong choice. You can choose whatever you want. You can want what you want.
Yeah,
And you may not get it, or it may have consequences that you haven't considered that might not be pleasant, but that doesn't make your choosing wrong. It just makes
correct.
a choice that has consequences.
Correct.
And I would suggest all choices have consequences.
Yep. Um, um, how do I say it? Um, I forget right now. It'll come to me. There's enjoy the consequences of my choices. You will enjoy the consequences of your choice. You will in there's a kind of consequences. Consciously making a choice and seeing that it causes separation, you can now choose if you want separation to do it again. If that's what you want. It's working. Okay.
Right, right.
If separation isn't what you want and you find yourself separated, you can modify the choice or understand that that choice led to here. One of the things I'm prompted to say to Solomon is, wow, that was a mistake. Humans make mistakes. What did you learn from it? And which takes the blame and the judgment and you're bad. One of the insidious things that I've worked through is in my family of origin dysfunction, childhood trauma, I was guided to believe that my behaviors were me instead of my behaviors coming from a sense of self or a choice, which is separate. If I am my behaviors, Marty, I'm going to hell, according to the Pope. Uh, if I am my behaviors, too late. It's already too late. Okay, I am not my behaviors. I make choices and can readjust or learn something from them. In that sense, whatever choice I made is wrong. I either learn or create connection and intimacy.
It occurs to me as you were speaking that this all circles back to a year ago to the very first principle we looked at. I'm always getting what I want. If I'm
Right.
always getting what I want, then getting what I want is either right or wrong, or it's neutral. So I'm always getting what I want,
It, and it,
wh- whether consciously or unconsciously, subconsciously. And so
correct,
it can't be wrong because that's a law. You can't not get what you want.
correct,
And
correct.
so if that's a law,
The
then there is no moral implication to it because it operates all the time universally. We don't actually have a choice to not, we don't have, we can want to not what we want, but that's as best we can do because we're always
right,
getting what we want.
always getting what we want. And according to Adult Stream of Alcoholics, the goal of the unresolved complex post-traumatic stress is to recreate the circumstances that you survived, which is riddled with body chemistry of cortisols and adrenaline. because that's how you survive. So we recreate events that bring this scarcity, this when we're talking about that Mexican or Chinese, I remember getting into those conversations and thinking, she's doing this to me. She's doing this on purpose. So my perspective wasn't in the choice at all. It was in and her manipulating me was what I perceived. But guess what? In my childhood, my parents manipulated me. That was true. That was the reality of my childhood. So I took that belief, subconscious belief, recreated it in real time as an adult, which makes no sense. It's not rational, and had to come up with an excuse or a reason or some kind of rationale of why I did what I did. And that's it. Getting back to no is a complete sentence. I can say no. I can explain. It's not that I can explain. I can, depending on the value of my relationship. If it's with a car dealer offering me a deal I don't want, no is a complete answer. No, no, no. And then I remember a salesman, we got broken into one time, and an alarm system, I guess they were hooked in with the police station. I don't know. These people came by selling alarm systems.
Right.
And I said, no. And he says, I don't think I'm not understanding why you say no. And I just simply told him, it's okay that you don't understand. No. And he looked at me like I wasn't playing the game. My no was complete. It was
Right.
no. And then he did the sales pitch thing. Like, I understand why you'd say no. You just, okay. It's okay that you don't understand. No.
Right. I support you not. I support your lack of understanding.
It supports your lack of understanding. It's okay. So,
Well, we've come to the end of our time together. This is another principle. No is a complete sentence, and I dare say we didn't exhaust everything that we could have
no,
examined here, but
we
no.
certainly, no, we did not. Any one of these principles could take a whole year if we addressed all of the
Right. Well, we
different
can always
pieces.
come back again
Yeah,
and
we will.
revisit them. But I think that I'm going to summarize what I think, and then I'm going to ask you to have the last sentence, the last word here. But I think no is a complete sentence is about learning to be willing to be responsible for my choices consciously and be willing
Yes,
to disappoint people, to be
yes,
willing to, like, if you don't like my no, just like that salesman you were talking about, okay, I hear you. And
yeah,
and I am standing in my no just as powerfully as I would stand in my yes.
hmm,
In fact, there's a line I think Jesus says in the New Testament, let your no be no and your yes be yes.
exactly. Yes.
So those are my concluding thoughts. Any last minute thoughts that you have?
What I've come to understand is let your no be no and your yes be yes is that you're okay with who you are, um, and you're not going to be taken off centered. You're standing in your power, um, and that's not the right way of standing in your power. Standing in your um, concept of self. There's nothing. I don't need somebody to validate me, although it's nice when they do. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Um, I can stand solid in my choice and see what happens because I'm not going to die. Neither is the other person, unless it's giving me the oxygen mask. But other than that, um, yeah. So it's a learning tool.
Thanks, John. Um,
Okay.
just to let those of you that are watching know that the principles that we're talking about here and the intentional living practice is a practice, and we actually learn
Yeah.
it in a group setting. And we have 4 different intentional living groups that meet on Zoom every week, and we invite you to come and participate, ask questions, look at your no, look at your yes. We'd be happy to help you look at this on your behalf. And information as of the time and dates and Zoom addresses of each of the meetings is at the end of the podcast. So please feel free to come and join us. And with that, John,
Yes.
we will see you next week and get to that next principle.
The next and final, hopefully we don't have too many more. We had another one. Okay.
All right, brother.
All right, Marty. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.